यामुनतीरवनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजना यमुनतीरवनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam namaskritya naram cheva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet nashtaprayesha bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 13, texts 12 onwards. I'm not going to read till 26 because they won't make sense, all of them. Actually, the following verses are connected to 27. So I'm only going to read 12 and maybe 13. So whoever is doing tomorrow should read from 14 onwards to 27 because they're more connected to 27 than 12. Okay. Arajaka bhayam nirnam manyamana maharshayah deham mamanthu smanime kumara samajayata arajaka bhayam nirnam manyamana maharshayah deham mamanthu smanime kumara samajayata arajaka bhayam nirnam manyamana maharshayah deham mamanthu smanime kumara samajayata मन्यमाना महर्षयः देहं ममन्तुस्मनिमे कुमारः समजायत अराजकभयं नृणां मन्यमाना महर्षयः देहं ममन्तुस्मनिमे कुमारः समजायत. Ladies, please. अराजकभयं नृणां मन्यमाना महर्षयः देहं ममन्तुस्मनिमे कुमारः समजायत. Arajakabhayam, due to fear of the danger of an unregulated government. Nranam, for the people in general. Manyamanaha, considering the situation. Maharishyaha, the great sages. Deham, the body. Mamantu, churned. Sma, in the past. Nimehe, of Maharaja Nimi. Kumaraha, one son. Samajayata, was thus born. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Thereafter, to save the people from the danger of an unregulated government, the sages churned Maharaj Nimi's material body, from which, as a result, a son was born. Purport. Arajaka bhayam. If the government is unsteady and unregulated, there is danger of fear for the people. At the present moment, this danger always exists because of government by the people. Here we can see that the great sages got a son from Nimi's material body to guide the citizens properly. For such guidance is the duty of a Kshatriya king. A Kshatriya is one who saves the citizens from being injured. In the so-called people's government, there is no trained Kshatriya king. As soon as someone strong accumulates votes, he becomes the minister or president without training from the learned Brahmanas, expert in the Shastras. Indeed, we see that in some countries the government changes from party to party, and therefore the men in charge of the government are more eager to protect their position than to see that the citizens are happy. The Vedic civilization prefers monarchy. People liked the government of Lord Ramachandra, the government of Maharaj Yudhishthira, and the government of Maharaj Parikshit, Maharaj Ambarisha, and Maharaj Prahlada. There are many instances of excellent government under a monarch. Gradually, the democratic government is becoming unfit for the needs of the people, and therefore some parties are trying to elect a dictator. A dictatorship is the same as a monarchy, but without a trained leader. Actually, people will be happy when a trained leader, whether a monarch or a dictator, takes control of the government and rules the people according to the standard regulations of the authorized scriptures. Next verse. Because he was born in an unusual way, the son was called Janaka. And because he was born from the dead body of his father, he was known as Vaideha. And because he was born from the churning of his father's material body, he was known as Mithila. And because he constructed a city as King Mithila, the city was known as Mithila. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swa Padantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Krupa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada quotes a Bengali saying, a blind uncle is better than no uncle at all. A blind uncle is better than no uncle at all. And he quotes this in the context of sometimes in a particular service or situation when there is an absence of a leader, it is perhaps better to have somebody than nobody. Of course, always best to have somebody who's well trained and knows what they're doing. Always the case. But in the absence of anything else, having somebody is better than having nobody. Because having nobody is the worst case scenario, it's the worst one. So having a blind uncle is like having at least somebody's there occupying a position, and it brings with it certain methodology or decorum. Because if you don't have a leader, either it's a country or whatever unit, if there is no leader, then it has very heinous effects. I'm going to read you some things. So the word is arajaka bhayam. Raja is king or leader, particularly king. Araja means one kingdom that does not have a king. And arajaka bhayam nirnam, when there is no leadership, physically there's no person present as a leader, then the people are living in fear. They're living in fear because nobody is following any rules. Isn't that saying, when the cat is away, the mice are playing? So people in general, that's just the nature of a conditioned soul, especially human being, is that they live a life that is rebellious to a particular social order. Everyone's trying to break the rules. And that is why you have police, you have punishment. And in different countries, the punishments are even more drastic because the persons break the rules much worse. So punishments are very drastic. They have a grade of punishments. If we speed while we are driving, then you get a ticket, a speeding ticket. If you park in a place you're not supposed to park, you get a ticket. If you drive under the influence of alcohol, you get a bigger ticket. Sometimes your license is revoked. If you kill someone, then there is homicide, manslaughter, first degree, second degree. There's a whole long list. There's punishment. If you take away someone's money illegally or unlawfully, then you have to pay a fine. So these are all there to bring a certain sense of awe and a sense of following of rules. Because when there are rules, then everything follows in order. If there is a society where if you tell them, no rules, do as you like, then the society cannot be progressive. You need rule. And so then you need rulers. Because without rulers, rules cannot be enforced. As simple as that. So in this case, Maharaj Nimi, who I guess died because of Vasishta's curse, and decided, I don't want to have another body. So as far as becoming a king and all that, forget it. I don't want to be. I'm happy to be in my spiritual body and take care of my spiritual life. But the kingdom needs a king. So always the great sages, Maharashaya, they churned Maharaj Nimi's material body. Previously in the Bhagavatam, there was another king, a horrible king, by the name Vena. And when Vena was cursed by the Brahmins to die, because he was a horrible king, they realized, oops, we don't have a king, we need one. So they churned his body again, and then two persons were born. First, all the sin in Vena was embodied by a person, the king of the Nishadas, the tribal night dwellers. So they let him go. And then when they churned again, from his thighs came two personalities, Prithu Maharaj and his wife, Archi. And Prithu became an awesome king. So these sages had a way by which they can, from a dead body, bring out progeny. How we don't have that technology anymore. But they had. So in this case, Maharaj Nimi's body was churned and came a son, Kumaraha Samajayata. A boy was born. Samajayata means was born. But this boy was born in a very unusual way. That's the next verse. And because he was born in a very unusual way, his name was Janaka. Janaka means born in an unusual way, without a mother. And since his body was churned out of a dead body, his name was Vaideha. Deha means a body. Literally, it also means alive body. Of course, body is never alive. It's because of the presence of the soul. But it means like an active, live body. And Vaideha is out from a body that doesn't have life in it. So Sita Devi was the consort of Lord Ram. One of her names is Vaidehi, because she was born to Vaideha. And the third name, because he was born out of churning his father's body, his name is Mithila. And that place exists even today. That whole region is called Mithila. There's a language called Mithila or Maithili. That whole region where Ayodhya is called Maithili. And because Sita Devi was his daughter, her name is also Maithili. There's a language called Mithila, there's a kingdom called Mithila, etc. So here's a nice connection, if you will. The first word, Prabhupada starts the purport with Arajaka Bhayam. That the consequences of not having a leader, a king. And I'm going to connect it to Ramayana, you'll see. And Prabhupada says that ideally any people should be ruled by a monarch, by a trained sage-like monarch, Raja Rishi, because they know how to keep their citizens happy and free of fear. So the example is Lord Ramachandra, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj. However, with time, these kings, not these, the list that I said, in general, kings became greedy. And instead of protecting their citizens, they started exploiting their citizens. The kings became such because the Brahmanas, who were supposed to be pure and giving good advice, became mercenaries. They became materialistic. So they were not getting good advice, and actually when the kings are not getting good advice, they will do not such good things. So you see in the history of the world, there are many coup d'etats, right? There are many coups because the bourgeois class rebelled against the elites, and there was the French Revolution. There were other kings that were kings and queens that were very, very cruel. So the common people will rebel against their kings and set up their own governments. And right now, in this world, similar situation is going on. There is a small province in Spain called Catalonia that wants independence from Spain. And so there's all these fighting and rebellion. Africa is full of situation where two countries are within one nation. They want their certain set of people want their freedom and independence, etc., etc., etc. So democracy became the way by which people decided they will rule themselves. We don't want a king. We don't want a dictator. We will form government for the people, by the people, and of the people. So everyone applauded. Awesome, awesome, democracy. What happens in a democracy is, of course, it is better than, like I said, a blind uncle is better than no uncle. However, in a democracy, most people vote for their leader. Okay? And they vote because they're promised certain things. And among that particular group, they put out their best person. But if that person is not trained in how to take care of people, except they speak very well or whatever is their qualification, then they become rulers. In India, there was a woman who had the title the Bandit Queen. She was a dacoit. Her name was Phulan Devi. She became a member of parliament. A few years ago, she was fighting the government, living as a dacoit, looting people. Of course, her story is a very sad story. She was raped multiple times and exploited and all. She became very angry and she started a parallel little government of thugs and dacoits, almost like a Robin Hood, if you will, to steal from the rich people, but still breaking the law. So the Indian government trapped her in the forest and she then surrendered herself. And there's a Time magazine and all that had pictures of the bandit queen surrendering herself. So she went to jail. She came out of jail and then decided to run for elections. And from that area, won her seat in the parliament. Okay, but that's how democracy works. So she sits in parliament, and what does she do? She doesn't know how governments are run. She doesn't know what the rules are, etc. So that's a leader now. Like that, there are many persons who become, either they can buy votes of people, or they're very strong and powerful. They force people to vote for them and they become rulers. And then do what? How are they benefiting the people in any way? So if they're popular, they become politicians. Politicians are not those who become popular. Politicians are those who know how to rule society. You know, like our country is going through a situation right now. Unfortunately, the person sitting on top has no clue what to do. And so it's causing enough problems out there in the world. But that's the nature of democracy. 26 point something percent of the citizens voted. 75% of the citizens decided not to vote. So whoever voted, somebody got the majority and is now the ruler of the land. Still, on the one hand, horrible such leaders, whoever they are, versus no leader. A blind uncle is better than no uncle at all. So the sages, they're always concerned. If there's no leader, what would happen? So I want to read you. Here's the situation in Ramayana. Okay, Lord Ramachandra has been banished to the forest. He was going to be the prince regent or the next king the next morning. The previous night, you know the story. Dasharath Maharaj banishes Lord Ram to the forest for 14 years. So Lord Ram, when he's ready to go, his very dear brother Lakshmana, he says, no, I cannot let you go alone. I will go with you. So anyway, there's a whole dialogue, but Lakshmana is also left home. And the other two brothers, Bharata and Kshatrughna, they have gone up north to Bharata's maternal uncle's home. So the palace does not have any prince right now. And when Lord Ram has left for the Dandaka forest, the news, Sumantra comes back and gives him news that Lord Ram has crossed the Ganges river and is now gone to a place called Chitrakoot. That news is so devastating for Maharaj Dasharath that at night, in his sleep, he dies out of that sadness and does not wake up the next morning naturally. So Kaushalya Devi and the other attending ladies in the palace, they're in hysteria, crying. And the sages, headed by Markandeya Rishi, here are the names of the sages, the great sages who were there, along with Vasishta, were Markandeya Rishi, Maudgalya, Vamadeva, Kashyapa, Katyayana, and Gautama. All these great thinkers, they're there. And they consider, hey, Dasharatha is dead. Lord Ram, who's the next king, is out in the forest. Bharata is with his maternal uncle. Lakshmana and Shatrughna are also not there. We need a king. We need a king immediately. So we need to call Bharata back, like ASAP. So they are convincing Vasishta to please send a messenger and call Bharata back. Because immediately, as soon as the final rites are done, we need to crown the next prince or king of the land. Because they are concerned. The verse begins here with Arajaka. The verses that I'm going to talk to you start with the word Na Rajake. Na Rajake, without a king. The same words. The interesting thing is, Markandeya Rishi and these sages, in 30 verses, so it's not one, in 30 verses, they describe what happens when there is no king. Meaning it's a very serious situation. Although in the Bhagavatam, one phrase is used, Arajaka Bhayam. The Ramayana quotes 30 verses. So I thought I'm going to read you some of I won't bore you with all 30, but every verse belongs with the word Na Rajake, next verse, Na Rajake, next verse, Na Rajake, meaning without a king, here are all the consequences. You ready? All right. So, first they say that in a land where there is no king, you will only hear thunder. You will hear thunder of clouds. You will see lightning in the sky, but no rain. So when thunder and lightning happen, it tells the people that rains are coming. So for farmers, for animals, rain is very, very important. For every human being, for every living entity on land, rain is most essential. Without rain, what does Bhagavad Gita say? There is no grain. Without grain, there is no brain. Because nourishment of the brain comes from grain. And if you don't have brain, no sacrifice. So it's a cycle. If one person who does not perform sacrifice, doesn't have enough intelligence to perform yajna or sacrifice, then there will be no rain. For no rain means no grain. So there will be thunder and lightning, but no rain. Because there's no king performing yajnas. Then the farmers will be afraid to scatter handfuls of seeds because they are afraid whether crops or not will happen, right? Because no rain, you're not sure. It says, in a rulerless kingdom, sons are not afraid of or not respectful to their father. The wives are not amenable to their husbands because it's all about that there is anarchy. No one cares for any rules. There is no concept of personal property because the government is always, whenever you say there is property, there are others who are ready to take away that property by force. There will be abundant adultery within a kingdom. One of the concerns of Arjuna in fighting the war was, if there are no men giving shelter to society, then women become unprotected. And there will be a lot of unwanted progeny because they will be exploited. There will be unwanted pregnancies. And he uses the phrase Varna Sankara. Varna Sankara means unwanted population, unwanted progeny who have not been conceived properly. Then he says there are great risks, and one of the risks is there won't be any truthfulness. People will not be inspired to be truthful because no one's looking, no one's checking. People will not construct big assembly halls for gatherings, for marriages, for ceremonies, for people to gather and perform religious functions. People will not plant nice gardens and trees. You know, when we drive, we see all these promenades with trees lining our streets, beautiful trees. And in summer and fall, you see them arching over the road. They're all ordered in a particular way because the government wants to make sure there are nice trees. The people won't care for planting trees, making gardens. They will not build sacred houses like churches, temples, mosques, etc. The Brahmanas will not be performing any samskaras. They will not take up any austere vows. The Brahmanas will exploit and take away people's money by making them do all sorts of foolish yajnas. In India, there was recently a yajna performed where a fellow wanted to get his dog married to another dog. So the bride and groom were male and female dogs, and they were garlanded. The family came and the priest recited all the mantras. Can you imagine that? My gosh. Then people will not hold festivals in honor of the deities. There will not be any dancing and singing and music in front of the deities. People will file lawsuits against each other, and there won't be any proper arbitration because there's no government, no Supreme Court, no court system, no judges, because they have to be appointed by the government. And if there are no court system, then anybody can do what they like. There won't be proper arbitration, there won't be fairness, there won't be justice, etc. People will not feel that their disputes have been settled properly. Then they say that young women cannot fearlessly walk in the streets because there would be unscrupulous men who would cause disruption to them. They say that people will not be able to sleep with open doors. Everyone has to live in fear by locking their doors. When we go to bed at the temple or home, we make sure that all doors are locked. There are cameras in the building everywhere for safety, because people are always looking to break in. Our temple has cameras. People have locks, a security system, etc. In the previous ages, people didn't care so much. They would live and sleep with doors open. They would sleep on the roof of the building, outside the house. Of course, now there were no thieves, but there were fewer thieves. And in Lord Ramachandra's time, there was no thief, because everyone was happy. There was nothing to steal from someone else. It says without a government, people will not be able to sleep peacefully because they're always in fear that someone might steal from them, from fear of burglars or dacoits. Then they say that in a land without a ruler, elephants cannot live peacefully, because these elephants, as they grow older, their tusks become stronger and they're for ivory. In the previous ages, the elephants were protected. So without proper rulers, or bad rulers, however, these elephants cannot live peacefully because they'll be poached and killed for their ivory, their tusks. People cannot travel from one village or city to another because they're afraid someone will ambush them and steal all their wealth and property and belongings, etc., etc. And people cannot acquire property because who's going to fix the prices? Right now, we have a system of economy, right? And that system of economy is just, there is a price. Depending upon the location, you ask for a price, and the price has to match the surrounding. If the surrounding houses only sold for, let's say, $300,000, unless your house is very special, you cannot charge anything significant. It has to be in that neighborhood of numbers. But without a proper government looking at, are people being exploited or not, anyone can set any price for their homes, for their property, and have dubious selling methods, etc. So it's verse after verse after verse. I only read you a sample. There are 30 such verses describing the bad consequences or the horrendous consequences of not having a leader. So these great sages, Maharaja, they were concerned. And so they churned Nimi's body to bring forth another ruler by the name Janaka. So that's the pastime. Any questions or comments? You raised your hand because you want to say something? Let me get you a mic.
I just was wondering, of those 30 verses explaining the consequences, how many of those were observations and how many were conjectures or beliefs?
All of them are observations, because these sages have lived for many years looking and understanding society. They don't just throw things out of something. They have experience. They're called seers because they've seen the truth. We, on the other hand, common people, we guess some things, we project some things because we just assume. It's called extrapolation. We can only guess. None of us has the insight. None of us has the insight to understand what we're doing today, how and what those consequences of what we're doing today will be like. It's very difficult for us in general. Most of us live a life such that our intelligence does not allow us to figure out what the long-term consequences are. But there are some great thinkers who can see, either by observation that they have been there, seeing how things happen. And that's why they're advisors. They're called the great rishis. Rishis mean sages. They're called sages because they're very sage. And they're advisors. So every king and leader must have such advisors who can see, they can create the vision by their intelligence and by their experience. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Jitendra, Prabhu?
I never really gave it much thought, but Prabhupada states in the purport here, a dictatorship is the same as a monarchy, but without a trained leader.
Yeah.
But in the next sentence, he says, actually, people will be happy when a trained leader, whether a monarch or a dictator, takes control of the government and rules the people according to the standard regulation of the authorized scriptures. But like, at first he's saying that the dictator is an untrained leader, but then, I don't know, it's kind of like...
What it means is that a government, the democratic form of government, is very seriously limited in its efficacy. Because here's what happens in a democratic framework. It is a sheer numbers game. Okay, suppose you have 100 people in the room. Okay, and there's among the 100 there is one Brahmana and 99, let's say, Shudras. And the one Brahmana says we should turn left and go in this direction. And 99 Shudras says we should turn right and go in that direction. In a democratic government, one Brahmana is one vote, 99 Shudras is 99 votes, and majority wins. So everyone needs to turn right. In a monarchy, one Brahmana's word is far more in weight than 99 Shudras' words. There's no weighted system. Every person is treated exactly the same. If there's one body, there's one vote. And who they are, what their qualification is not a weighted number. That certain persons have a greater weight in their... So, because it's not a weighted system, then it's just a sheer number game. Prabhupada calls it. Okay. Anything else? Giridhari?
Is this the same personality mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, where it said Janaka?
Yeah.
kings such as Janaka.
Great kings such as Janaka? Yes. He's one of the Mahajanas.
And Sita is born of this personality.
Yes.
So we went.
Well, the next verse will explain. Sita was not born of him. His name is called Dhvaja. One second. There's some Dhvaja, and it's not this Janaka. There is another Janaka coming later. There is another king who's called Janaka, who has a daughter by the name Sita. His name is called Shiradhwaja. Shira means a plow, the front portion of the plow. So this king was plowing the land because he needed rains, and the king had to perform this yajna of plowing the land. While he's plowing the land, he finds in the land, buried in the ground, a golden lotus in which they found a baby, who he kept as his daughter. So Shiradhwaja's daughter is Sita Devi. He is also called Janaka. He gets the name Janaka also. So he comes few generations later. He's also called Janaka.
Is he the one in Bhagavad Gita, or is this?
It doesn't say, it says Janaka, so both are Janakas. So you can take either of them. Yes, Mataji.
I'm just recalling when I was growing up, it was a very much publicized thing that with the dictators in Africa, the elephants were constantly getting poached. It was very common. So that's very observable in this lifetime even.
Exactly. Not only elephants, but tigers, rhinos are being poached like anything. And they know how elephants, you know something about elephants? That elephants die in secrecy. When an elephant knows it's going to die, it walks away somewhere into forest, into some lonely spot, and gives up its body in the lonely spot somewhere in secrecy. Unlike any other animal that is dying, just is on the ground and just leaves its life there. Elephants die in secrecy. Very interesting why they are like that. Anyway, anything else? Oh, sure. Is it about what we talked today? Okay.
So, when we're in smaller groups, just like a family, the leaders kind of naturally arise, it seems.
Right.
And when we go to larger groups like a community, then it has to be some coordination between the families, and it seems again like a leader naturally arises and rules naturally just emerge from living together and knowing the people around you. And then to move higher than that, it seems at that point that it's no longer something that's natural. There needs to be something outside, because you don't know everybody. And so, right, so then if you don't know everybody in your community, then you might be afraid of somebody, or going to another community, and a lot of the things that are mentioned in the 30 verses. It seems like in that situation, if there's nothing uniting the communities, then you would have that sort of mayhem. How do you know when? What is it that determines an effective king? How does a good ruler become?
Excellent question. Thank you. Very nice observation. In fact, you've sort of highlighted something very amazing. Thank you. See, in a family, you said there's a natural leader. Okay, it's usually the father, depending on the whatever. If the whole family, let's say the family has a father, mother, and like 5 kids. If the family sits together and says, you know what, we don't want you to be the leader, we're all there, we will make a democratic decision in the family. We don't care what the parents say, we will decide. And all the 5 kids will decide together. And so 5 votes against 2. Haha, you do what as we say. The family cannot run like that, right? Because for whatever reason, there are hundreds of reasons why. So, like that, in society, there are natural leaders. In the previous ages, there were kings. And these kings would make sure that they have princes who they could train to make them kings. So, is there a possibility that there's a bad apple? Sure, there's always a possibility. However, the kings were very careful how they would conceive a child. And that child would then be properly trained by all the sages, the great teachers. They would be trained in the art of warfare. They would be trained in rulership. They would be trained in finance. They would be trained in behavioral issues. They would be thoroughly trained, psychology, strategy. They would be trained all through their young age. And then they would be tested to see if they're a fit king. Only then that next person would be made king. And that person, because they were trained properly, would make sure that the next generation would be there. That's what in previous ages, every king would be very concerned if they had a proper progeny, next person to give the kingdom to. That's why you see, if there are brothers and they have children, there's all this sometimes this conspiracy, plotting to kill one and become the king and usurp the kingdom. That's what the whole Mahabharata is about. Because they could not find the suitable king. And Yudhishthir was the suitable king. But he was thrown out. So they would be very, very careful. All the kings can do whatever they like. They would make sure that they would have the next generation there. And if they didn't have, they would be in severe anxiety. And they would try different things to make sure they have a qualified son to give the kingdom to. So that was a constant concern for all the kings. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.